here, and hopefully nothing explodes. Can you say something real quick so I can see?
Okay, it's Zehra.
Okay. All right. So yeah. Hey, thank. Hold on. All right. Thank you. Welcome to whatever happening today. I don't know what's happening today. I'm interviewing students. This is part
The
of,
same,
yeah, this is
same.
part of my teacher reflection. I've been teaching in Turkey for the last 5 years. Turkiye, I'm sorry. Official name change. Don't want to offend anybody out there by saying the wrong names anymore. But yeah, I've been teaching here for 5 years, and I taught at Çukurova University in person and online. And it's been a wonderful experience. And part of it is I want to reflect on the things that I have been doing. And so, yeah, I would like to introduce Zera Seyhan.
Hi.
That's your last name?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah,
yes, yes. You remember?
I do.
So,
Yeah.
it's Zehra. Hi. I am a senior student at Gazi University right now.
Hmm.
At first, I studied at Çukurova University, and then I transferred to Gazi University. I studied for 2 years at Çukurova University. That's where we met,
Hmm.
you know. I took writing one and writing two from you, and they were awesome because there was pandemic, and we were too stressed, depressed, and you
Hmm.
brought some interactive materials every day, every lesson, and they made us attend your lessons more and more. They made us more motivated in your
Nice.
classes.
Hmm.
And when I first saw your name
Uh-huh.
before we met, I I I got excited because I haven't had a foreign instructor before. So I was curious about the whole process. So I met you, and you were so positive and energetic, and energy is infectious. So your energy passed to us and make us more motivated in the
So
lessons.
even online, right? Because we were only online. You
Yes.
could still feel the energy, the motivation through
Yes.
Zoom.
Yes. Yes. I don't know how, but I felt that, and I haven't missed your any of your classes, I believe.
Yeah.
So the other lessons I can't say the same thing, but your classes were so fun because you use Canvas, and we share some photos, and I couldn't go outside because of the pandemic, and
Hmm.
I was too stressed, and you made me go outside and take a picture
Nice. Oh,
and
really?
shared it on Canvas. Yes.
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and share a location. I chose a park next to my apartment, and it was fun. I had a reason to go outside and take a deep breath outside, right? It was
Yeah.
it was so good.
I mean, yeah, I was looking at all of the information, all the news, basically also about like our mental health, social issues that we were
Mm.
having. 'Cause social distance wasn't just about social distancing for physical, for, your health. It was also making people just not talk to each other and go outside, and
Yeah.
I think one of the assignments was just take a photo outside of anything, right? And somebody took a photo of their balcony, somebody just took a photo outside the window, and you went to the
Mhm.
park. So yeah, with your,
Yes.
I think you were with
With
your
my hat.
friends, yeah, and you were with people, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
They took my photo.
nice. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So
it was fun.
so how did we meet again? What was this moment?
I believe it was the moment that I turned my mic on
Okay,
because nobody turned their cameras on or
no.
turned their mics on. And when I turned my mic on, I felt it is not that bad. Okay, and you were too kind, and you didn't care if I'm wrong or I'm doing mistakes,
Yeah.
making mistakes. I'm sorry. So it was, it felt cozy,
Okay.
comfortable, and a friend atmosphere. So that's how we met, I believe.
Okay. Good. Yeah. And yeah, I think for me, I didn't ever require students to turn on their cameras. You know, I knew the situation. You were in your homes, and I didn't,
Yeah.
you know, and you didn't have proper offices or even maybe your own room, and you had to study in the living room, somebody told me. You know, and I get it, like, it's early in the morning or late at night, and people should just have their privacy. So and I also, as a teacher, I found it very distracting to see everybody, and they're like, and they're looking this way, and they're, you know, they're muted, but they're talking to their moms, and I'm like, no, I can't teach like that. So actually, yeah, other than like chat boxes and somebody answering questions through the microphone, I thought that that was the better, like, kind of way of participation in an online class, not in an in-person class, but online. Yeah, cool.
But we learned constructivism after we met, and
Mm-hmm.
I, I learned that I thought
What is
it was
constructivism? Sorry,
Bob.
sorry. You have to explain constructivism. Yeah,
Constructivism
this is your test.
focuses on the student.
Uh huh.
It's student based approach.
Right.
So it care about our needs, age, proficiency level, and etc. And you were caring about us.
Mm-hmm.
We felt that, and it made us more motivated in your classes. That's why we attend your classes day by day.
Yeah.
So when I learned constructivism, yes, it is Bob. I know that. You use it and you care about us. You care our choices, desires, needs, and interests.
Right.
So it
Even.
was good to see it works.
Right.
So I thought that I should be use I should use some constructivist approaches in my classes too.
Of course. Yeah. So I hear this a lot from my students in the English language teaching departments was, you know, in during practicum theory classes, methodology classes, students would raise their hand and say, that's what Mr. Bob did in his class. That's what Mr. Bob did in his class. And
Yeah.
yeah, I only taught you guys first year language skills, reading, writing, listening, and speaking. I never taught about pedagogy, but I just used the pedagogy that I had
Yeah.
just learned in graduate school. So I had just learned a year before
Yes.
how to do these things. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I knew the difference, the educational system in Turkey and the other countries there.
Uh huh.
So, and I was taking writing 2 and writing 1 from you, but you were teaching integrated way. In
Yeah.
integrated way, you focused on speaking, sometimes listening and reading, of course. So not just writing.
No,
So I remembered that.
I really don't know how somebody could just focus on, okay, let's write a sentence today, like without any talking, without any story, you know. And I liked using videos in the class, and a lot of my students liked the videos because I felt like it was an easier way for students to, one, engage with the materials, but also that you weren't just copying and pasting. You actually had to listen and quote from the videos, you know. So
Yeah.
I did that on purpose, to make you have to listen. And I know that it's
Yes.
not a listening class, but yeah, you're learning all of these skills all at once. Yeah.
Yes, we need to have a sufficient input so we can produce something in speaking.
Nice.
So you did the right thing.
Okay.
Yes.
Yay.
But at first we couldn't understand any of your words
Uh-huh.
because you were just speaking in English, not native. So we were struggling
Right.
then. But you said you'll get used to it.
You'll get used to it. Yeah.
Yes.
And I
And
did.
we got used to it.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I always say stick with the process. It'll, you know, it'll take about 3 to 4, 5 weeks maybe for you to get to that point. But I also, sorry, I realized when I watched my old videos, I was speaking pretty quickly. So I was
But
talking fast. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good. Now I can
Yeah.
understand the sitcoms without subtitles because of you,
Oh, even
right?
you didn't even take the listening class. Oh, just from, okay. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, and what I really liked about the online class is that if you missed something, you could watch the video again. You know, like I recorded the videos, I put them on YouTube. If there was something you were like, what did he say? You know, you could actually go back and analyze my speech, you know?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
After the ELT convention, I watched some 3 or 4 of your videos.
Uh huh.
I I went past
Okay.
because of Ken, and I listened to them. I watched them. I understand clearly.
Awesome.
There wasn't any problem. So you improved our listening skills, of course.
Good. Yeah, because the other thing I've always seen other, let's say, native English speakers, sorry, I don't like that term, but a lot of times they speak like, hello, everyone. How are you today? And I'm like, speak like a normal human being, please. You know, you're not helping your students. Like, speaking slower doesn't help. Speaking, you know, in a measured, you know, I use a lot of these thought groups when I speak. So I would say
Mhm.
something, I would pause just for a second and then move on. So I mean, I think it's really important that we speak in a natural way and let our students struggle a little bit, like throwing them into the water. But, you know, you're going to be there to pull them out. They're not going to drown. Don't worry. You're not going to drown. There's things in
Yeah.
place. Yeah. So speaking
Yeah.
about the conference, what conference are you talking about?
ELT convention.
Uh-huh.
uh, met you. You
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah, I know.
we actually met there because you didn't know me because I didn't turn my camera on. So I
Well, we had never
went to
met. Yeah. So that was the thing. I taught fully online for 1 year in 2021 to 2022. No,
yeah.
2020 to 2021. Um, and I never met most of my students in person until the next year. But you weren't there or had already left, maybe. So yeah, this was the first time we met in person. And you
Yeah,
reckon,
it was a big chance
yeah.
that I recognize you. And I said, it is Bob. It is Bob. Yeah, I have to go there and meet him.
Nice.
So that happened.
That's one. Yeah, no, that was wonderful. So, yeah, I love the fact that you came up to me during this conference and just were like, Mr. Bob. And I said, okay, you have to be one of my students I never met in person. This, like, okay. Like, and I was trying to figure out who you were because I go to these conferences and people do come up to me that I've met at another place or something, but you said Mr. Bob. And so I knew.
Yes, but it's too past. It is too normal that you don't recognize me.
No, I mean, I just remember the photo because I didn't ever saw the camera. Right? I mean,
Yeah,
I can
with
remember.
mask.
Right. And also, you were in the writing class, which means that you weren't doing these same activities and not recording videos where I was like, because I think online, if you don't, I was doing a lot of research on how to build communities in an online space. And a lot of my
Hmm.
research went into this classroom is like, how do you create authentic moments where students can learn about each other? So, there were things where you shared your hobbies with each other, and it was in writing. But, there are some students I remember so well because they had their cameras on or they were always interacting and making videos. The writing class was different. And so, yeah, I think it was always hard for me, even in face to face, to remember the writing students. So, you know, I do remember you.
But I got jealous.
I know, I'm sorry. I wish that you could have taken, I wish I could have taught every single first year students. I mean, you at least are luckier than not lucky, I don't know. I'm not bragging, but there are some students that never took any of my classes, right? The other group.
Yes, yes.
And
So
somebody,
sorry for
I
them.
know.
It's their loss. I don't care.
And somebody on Instagram was like, I feel like I missed a part of my education because I didn't take one of your classes, Mr. Bob. And I was like,
Uh,
oh.
Aw.
Oh. Right. So that was a chance, a serendipitous, a kismet moment that we got to meet at Metu. I was very happy
Yes.
to reconnect and also to learn about your story. So, what have you been doing since we were learning together online?
I haven't done anything actually.
We'll
But
talk about
I
Ghazi. What about Ghazi? What happened with that?
I I love my department because I love my professors and they are too qualified and I have learned so much from them.
Hmm.
And that's why I wanted to stay at Gazi University for MA.
Uh-huh.
So I love there, but Ankara is too cold.
No, because you're from
Too
Adana. Yeah,
cold.
no, it's
So
normal.
I missed Adana so
Okay.
much.
I do too. I consider it my Turkish hometown. I'm going back
And
next week for the graduation, which you're not going to be there because you
oh,
already graduated. So,
thanks.
what did you do? If you moved from Chukurova, what happened? How did you get inspired to want to change? You love
I
Adana,
was
but you moved to Ankara.
yes, I was thinking of transferring to Gazi University beforehand, but I because of my friends, they convinced me to do it.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, whatever, I apply it, and then it happened. I didn't get. I couldn't feel that I'm leaving Adana,
Hmm.
and it was so it was like a disaster at first because I understand the fact that I couldn't go back to Adana again. But that's all. So
Yeah.
my friends convinced me to do it
Okay.
because when I wrote my first preferences, the in the first line I wrote Gazi,
Hmm.
and then I couldn't get there, so I came to Çukurova University, and then it was on my mind all the
Okay.
time, so I decided to
Okay.
come here.
And that's moving up, right? Like this is
Yeah.
a more
But I
prestigious.
miss my friends from Adana. They
I know.
were too friendly, so friendly. So they
Nice.
were so sweet, and I miss them. I couldn't see them again.
Hmm.
So that's all.
You will. You will. You should go back to
I
Adana next week. Just go back for graduation.
I hope so
Okay.
because I have KPSS, I have interview for MA,
Right.
and then some moving out things.
You have time. You can go study in Adana. All right. So you mentioned that you took a writing one and a writing two, but only half of it. I'm sorry. I had to leave in the middle of that
Yes,
semester.
but it was the second term.
Yeah.
We spent 1.5 term together.
Yeah.
So
I know. I'm sorry for leaving. And they were fully online. What is something that you learned from me, and how did it affect your education from those two classes?
I learned them if you smile as a teacher, your students smile too.
Yep.
And I use it in my practicum, but they have some domestic problems in their home, and they they show some unwanted behaviors
Yeah.
because of the I think it was about the high school
Mm-hmm.
because it was mesleki technique. Do you know it?
No.
Okay. It is meslek lisesi, and some of problematic students
Yeah.
are there.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it is known thing in
Yeah.
Turkey.
Okay.
So I used it and I got some good results from it. And then I learned Canvas from you, and it
Okay.
was too good, but it's too complicated. How did you get its process?
Just trial and error. Some of it was just learning things online. It's one of those systems that they still use. So Canvas is a learning management system. It's a little old school. I mean, So yeah, it lets me post things. I can give information to students. They have to log in. It shows you all your grades and everything. It was just trial and error. So that was my first year with you guys using that. I had never used it before. I only had been
Yes.
a I had been a student in it, so that helped, like using it as a student let me see, okay, how can I and Canvas has a cool thing. You can use the student view button. You can press it and see what the students see. But I was just kind of learning as I went. I had a colleague, Katrina. She kind of gave us a little tutorial because we were all kind of figuring if we're going to be teaching online for the rest of our lives because the pandemic would ruin the world, how would I be able to teach online? And Canvas was very powerful compared to Google Classroom. I used Google Classroom in the
Yes.
past and in
Mm-hmm.
the present, but a lot of trial and error, a lot of Google, looking up things on Google and the forums in the Canvas help stuff. That really helped me.
Yeah, but you were so prepared for the online education classes. I get that because you brought lots of interactive materials to the class. So
Yeah.
with like breakout rooms, word wall, canvas, sharing photos, commenting on each other's photos, kind
Yeah.
of things. And you assign homework, but it doesn't feel like homework.
Yeah.
I did it for fun.
That's that's the
It was
that's
enjoyable to do.
right. That's what teachers should get to the point of.
Yes,
All the
yes.
assignments should feel like, not always. Sorry, not always. I'm not gonna say that. Sometimes students have to do hard work, but yeah, when you're giving like things that are helping students, it should be personal. It should be fun. It should explore students' interest and things like that. Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah,
Um,
I would say, yeah, the preparation was just during the beginning of the pandemic before I was teaching you. So that first year, it was just I was teaching for half a semester and then the pandemic happened and we had to go
mhm.
fully online. And it was great because that group of students, 2019, 2020, they were already using Google Classroom in face-to-face class with me because I was
Yeah.
using it as a way to kind of manage stuff. And so they were like, okay, we know the system. And so that really helped transition things. It was just a lot of trial and error, but I also had just a lot more free time. Like we weren't going out, there was nothing to
Mhm.
do. I was living at home. I didn't have a schedule. I wouldn't recommend any teacher to like burn themselves out, but I just put my heart and my soul and watched lots of YouTube videos. I really learned how to use this camera thing with lights and microphones and all the
Mhm.
YouTubers. So when I went to the class and the students were like, "You look like a YouTuber," and I say, "Hey, everybody, welcome to the channel today," and they would just
Mhm.
start laughing. I love that. And the other thing was, I was trying to like. My goal was how can I turn every face-to-face thing into some like the simulacrum, like the simulation version
Mhm.
of an in-person activity. So like, what's it called? We did that game where it was find someone who,
Mhm.
and it's the bingo game. Usually in person, you
Yes.
you you go up to somebody, you ask them a question. They say, have you ever been to blah blah blah, and they say yes. Have you ever eaten Adana kebab in the morning? Yes, I have. Sign, right? I did that with a breakout room where I put everybody in a breakout room and immediately I would press end breakout room and it gave them only 1 minute to like go in,
And
ask the
too
question.
stressful to break out
Oh,
rooms.
they were like,
They were too stressful.
no, yeah, yeah, they were like, this is so chaotic but fun. And I was like, that's what
Yeah.
I wanted to feel, like that feeling in the classroom when you're like running around and I say, there's 5 minutes left, everybody find your, get bingo, and everyone's running around. That frantic feeling of like looking for somebody, that was really fun. So what I did was breakout room, random student each time, put them in 1 minute and go back out, and yeah, it was frustrating because some students internet was slow, their phones didn't work quite as well as somebody else's
Yeah.
computer, but not everything has to work out.
Yes, yes, yes. But we're perfectionists.
Yeah, and my other thing is I maybe only did that activity once, and I wish that if I was teaching again that I would do the activities 2 or 3 times. So you would know exactly what you're supposed to do. I wouldn't have to explain anything, you know. So I think having routines on the in the online classroom, you know, so every time we started the class there was some kind of question thing, right? There was like a Padlet, or you had to tell me something kind of personal, kind of, you know, about your life, you know, not too personal, but you know.
You were using Padlet and we were writing something.
Yeah.
And when you were reading mine, my heart like tuck, you know.
Nice. I mean, but
It
that's
was
how
it
you
was
would feel
so
in the classroom too, right? Like if you were in the
yes,
classroom and
but
yeah.
not in the face-to-face classrooms. I'm so initiative person in face-to-face classrooms,
Yeah.
but in online, when it comes to turning my mic on,
Uh-huh.
uh, I get so stressed. Well,
I
I
know.
don't know why.
It's just, I mean, if you never practice, I mean, you know, even before pandemic, we were doing Skype interviews and Skype calls, you know. So I was not you know, I wasn't doing this whole light show. But I was used to like having to go. I had an interview before, you know, to come to Turkey, and I had to meet somebody in California. They were in Washington D.C., you know, and then I had to go find the right place. I was at work, and I was like, "Can I take 30 minutes off for lunch?" You know, and they're like, "Yeah, okay." I had to go find a place that was quiet. You know, I had to put on everything, and it was yeah. And you have to sit like this. Hi, you know, my name is blah blah blah. It is a different thing, and I think when you're not used to it, you know, it's the
Yeah,
same thing as yeah. If I put you on TV, if you were in person, but I put a camera in your face, you would also be stressed. You know, but
yeah.
you know, one thing that I heard from a student was that I asked them to make these videos, like 1 minute discussions. That was part of the assignments every week. And they were, you know, somebody mentioned, like, how do you do this, Bob? Like, you record 15-minute videos explaining the activities. And they're like, I can't even do this for like 30 seconds without, like, "Nah." You get used to it. That's all I have to say. You practice, you
Yeah.
practice. And now it's weird, but I can actually record myself talking for 2 hours while I'm doing something on the computer. So I've been trying to like think about this weird Twitch thing where instead of playing video games, I'm making lessons and I talk about the lessons and I record it and I'm like, yeah, what should I do here, guys? And nobody's there listening to me, but I'm just talking like I'm talking
I
to.
was there. Don't say that.
No, 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 no. This is different. I'm actually doing something where I'm like recording myself planning
Mhm.
lessons by
Oh,
myself in my apartment. Yeah.
you're pretending like there's someone
Yeah.
hearing you. Okay,
Kind of
it's
like
good.
if I was
And
twitching, you know, Twitch, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I want to see that video.
Okay. I have one. It's kind of illegal because I'm like copying the textbook and it's 2.5 hours long, but it's kind of funny. And the theme is just burnout, is like the whole time I'm talking about why am I doing this? This takes so much time. This took me 2.5 hours. But because I was recording it and because I was talking through it, I actually enjoyed it more and it was faster. So usually it takes me like 3 hours to do something like that each week. That week it only took me 2.5 hours, and I was like, oh, there's a benefit to this. And maybe
Yeah.
someday there will be a weird audience who just like, oh, I just want to listen to Bob making lessons on his computer all day. You know? All right.
Kind of.
So yeah, you mentioned some things that you would use in your future classrooms. What's something else that you would use that you learned in my classroom that you would use in your future classrooms, including constructivism? Doesn't have to just be activities. It could be like, you know, routines, things like that as well.
Yes, I got that you care about the social interaction in the classroom because we need this, you know. And you were using breakout rooms or some grouping or pairing kind of things, and I'm using these in my practicum,
Hmm.
and I'm going to be a teacher at some college, uh, in September, I believe, and I'm going to use that pair work, group work,
Great.
and I just want to focus on the social interaction much more than the grammatical rules or vocab teaching, because the most important thing if they are speaking or not, if they can get what are they're hearing or
Mm-hmm.
listening. It is the most important thing, I think, in the classroom. And I learned that from you
Okay.
because
Online
it
too.
was, yes, it was writing class, but you care about speaking.
Yeah.
We wrote something and you want us to read them
Right.
or talk about the topic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the water crisis. You
Yeah.
assigned us. I think it was the first essay I wrote in my entire life.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we
Cause and
watched an
effect.
yes, cause and effect essay. So we watched an episode from
Uh-huh.
Netflix, and we prepared a draft
Yeah.
and we wrote. And your feedback was awesome. You didn't miss any of these.
No.
So
It's a lot
my
of work.
so
I don't recommend you doing what I did.
yes, but
Yeah.
it took lots of time, I believe that. But it is important because I feel valued. I
Mm-hmm.
felt valued because you read what I wrote
Of course.
and you graded them one by one, and it was good.
Okay. Well,
I'm
I mean,
excited.
I gave you this rubric, right? This
Yes,
and it was like a oh no, an Excel sheet, and it basically told you where you missed points.
yes. And I think it was on Docs,
Uh-huh.
right? Google Docs.
Right.
And I can see what mistakes I made
Right.
one by one.
I would say that I still prefer grading on Google Docs versus writing notes
Mhm.
on a piece of paper. Sometimes do it on the iPad with a PDF, and it's even slower. So I would
Mhm.
say the slowest is trying to write notes on an iPad using the pen tool. Second would be the paper, because the problem with the paper is that when you write something and you're like, oh, that was
Mhm.
really harsh, like, let me erase that. That's the problem with that. And then, yeah, I love the Google Docs thing because I could just save, I can give you a comment. You could see where the mistake was, except there was no codes. I couldn't write like WC word choice. I couldn't write,
Yeah.
SVO, subject verb agreement stuff. So you didn't see that, and I wish that there is ways. There's like tools that you can color code your like your corrections. Um, but I do remember something you did in the class. It was the infographic, the 1980s.
Yes. I remember that. I I think I was wrote about the 90s music,
hmm
art, clothes, right?
80s, 1980s. Yeah.
80s.
Yeah,
Yes,
there was
yes,
like
yes.
Madonna. It was an infographic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I had so much fun while doing that
Oh, cool.
because it the same. It didn't feel like it's homework. You
No.
have to do it.
Right.
It wasn't stressful thing to do. It was enjoyable. So
Right.
I did it.
Because yeah, that the first semester was supposed to be about paragraphs. So I just figured out that instead of having you write a boring paragraph, you would write multiple paragraphs and explain your whatever choice. Somebody wrote about I don't remember all the topics, but
Yeah.
um yeah, you could choose your topic. You had to write a paragraph explaining this little part. You had to use a quotation, which was a great way.
Yeah.
Because if you ever look at an infographic that doesn't have a lot of writing, it has tons of citations. 30%
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. This comes from blah, 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 blah source, so that was good.
Yeah, but the paragraphs were too long, I believe, because
Yes, yours.
I could I could wrote much more how can I say, shorter
Concise.
paragraphs.
Yeah.
I could write because the infographic thing is something like that. So I
Right.
wrote so much.
I know, but I find that most students, let's say in Turkey, I think they learned how to write an essay, but they made it a paragraph. So you wrote like people that write like introductions in their paragraphs where they're explaining. I'm like, you don't need this. It's just a paragraph. But I think that what was happening in high school was you were given this assignment and you wrote something so detailed, and it only had to be a paragraph, but you were actually supposed to, you should just write an essay, in high school.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Let me go back to something. You mentioned group work and pair work. Is that
Mhm.
something that's just not common in Turkey? Were you used to doing that in my classrooms and other classrooms since?
Yes. Um, Especially in high school, I haven't seen that much
Right.
because they just passing all the listening and grouping, pairing kind of things, listenings and writings.
Mm-hmm.
No speaking in the target language. It's all native.
Right.
And how is that a English
Yeah.
lesson?
Just grammar
How can you
translation.
convince me that it is an English course?
Right.
So yeah, it wasn't common. Maybe we can change this traditional
Yeah,
thing. Our generation maybe can do it,
I hope
but
so. I know, but so my advice would be that you have to change their ideas about group work. So a
yeah,
lot of my students, like that first year ELT, they were like, I don't like group work because I always had to do all the work in the group work, and everybody else didn't do something. So, in my advice is like create roles. So every time you have four people together, one person should do this, be the writer, somebody should be the researcher, somebody should be the presenter that's going to do most of the talking.
yeah.
So they all have their roles. Um, but yeah, talking about constructivism, I there's two things I want to say. One
Mm-hmm.
is I there's this new system I use. I just get playing cards, okay?
Yeah.
And then you
Mm-hmm.
just make pairs. So I would make pairs. I would say all of the two reds are together, two
Mm-hmm.
blacks are together, and then they find each other, and then you can say, okay, all the twos together now. So you don't have to do anything, and you don't have to think about, oh, do I put this person with this person? Oh, they're gonna cry if they're not together. I found that my students were actually had more constructivism because they were talking to students they never talked to before, because they always choose where they sit, right? And so
Yes.
every time we did activities this year, I used the cards. They got so used to it, they just knew what to do. So you can pair people together that way. The other thing is you got to build trust. And that's part of what this thing is, right? So group
Mm-hmm.
work becomes this thing when you build enough trust, through your teaching. You can't expect it on the first day. But when it starts to happen, you start to see that students don't make fun of each other anymore. They're not like worried about competition. And I started to see in my prep students that they were speaking to each other in English. And not because I asked them to. I just started to notice that some of the students got comfortable with each other. I don't think they
Yeah.
did it with every student, but there were some students that I was like, you guys are speaking English in my English class? That's amazing, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So without asking, without prompting, I think that thing that we're trying to build, the constructivist ideas is actually about trust, and that students are supposed to help each other kind of build. Um, they learn from each other, right? Like pair work is
Yes.
great, and group work is even better if the higher level student is helping the lower level student understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, constructivism is the thing that I feel the most close to, if
Okay.
I'm not wrong. So,
Good.
we build our knowledge, we construct our knowledge because there is no one correct truth in the world. So knowledge could be changed from one to another. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to accept that. So the what the constructivism says here.
Oh,
So
good.
I admire that, and I get that when
Cool.
I learned about constructivism. It's Mr. Bob, I said. I remember.
I I'm gonna say that that's my favorite line from my students in ELT is like, that's what Mr. Bob did.
Yeah.
And and the fact that you remember, okay, the fact that you remember what I did in the classroom is like,
Mhm.
one, I'm honored. I'm flattered that you still remember something I did in the classroom. But I think it's a testament to how important these theories actually are, that they actually work. And when we
Yeah.
use them and when we apply them in like an effective and in a way that's slow enough for our students to understand, because I introduced new concepts that you guys were like, what are we doing, this is for children, Mr. Bob. And I said, well, you're learning a language,
We are all children.
right. Well, not that we are children. I think that play, structured play, right? This idea that like any playful thing is memorable, So
Yes.
we've taken the play away from adults. We say children play, adults are like, well, we just sit there. But we see in modern society with things like Burning Man and all these like sports now that adults are doing, there is this need for adult play, which doesn't mean you're a child. It just means you're having like fun with the material.
Yes, they say the crafts, the origami kind of things
Hmm.
belong to children, young learners. But we use them in ninth graders, and
Right,
they had so much fun, and
right.
they couldn't forget that.
No.
They stick it to the walls, and
Oh,
they
nice.
thank us to do this because their other lessons were too boring. They just
Right.
reading aloud. What's that? They read aloud the paragraphs and they just do some mechanical activities
Yeah.
and they just sitting on their desks from morning till night.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
I know.
English should be
Fun, it's
fun, it's
engaging.
enjoyable.
I mean,
So
my students did. I mean, they liked that I made them read out loud. We went down the line, but there were times where I said, "Okay, we're not going to read the book." Each group, you have a paragraph. You become the expert. You explain to us the paragraph. So there's different ways of doing reading, and the whole jigsaw slash like one group is the expert in one part. There's different ways to do it. I also think it's really important to practice reading because you need to start listening for pronunciation things. So
yes.
there's like the balance. Don't,
Mhm.
I think what I see with new teachers sometimes is that they like are so you get dopamine when your students are fun laughing and having fun, right? You get so
Yeah.
much dopamine. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I want to see this every day." But there is this balance where you need to kind of like have the moments. I think if you're
Mhm.
doing like the nice roller coaster ride, work, work,
Mhm.
work, a little pain, and then the dopamine feels better. So
Yeah.
I've seen some of my former students, now colleagues, that are like just like we just play games all day in class, and I'm like, okay, explain to me. Like, how do you know that they're
So
learning then? Like,
yes, so
yeah.
what about the learning
Right.
process?
I mean, if the game actually showed me that they're learning, I would say, okay, that's meaningful. Like, let's say we do a quizzes or a Kahoot, and I actually track their
Mhm.
scores. Quizzes is cool because I can see their scores individually. So that could be something fun but educational, right? But at least I know this student only got 50% correct. This student got 100 correct. Okay, where do I need to learn, where do I need to adjust, Like if you're just playing games all day and unless you're paying attention, you're like, "Oh, this student isn't doing well in the game and this student is doing better." If that helps you with your assessment of how to like teach better, great. But, for the most part, it's not going to do it.
No, there is no rubric here. There's no formal assessment. How can you assess their students?
Yeah.
So
I mean, we do have
it's
like,
kind of hard.
you have informal. I mean, a good teacher is able to like look at the student and say, okay, they are fully engaged. They understand this activity. Even though they're having fun and laughing, they understand. There are informal observations
Yeah.
that we can make. But yeah, at the end of the day, will that translate into whatever the outcome is? Like, do they have to pass this examination at the end of the year?
Yeah.
And so you need to figure out, is the transfer going to happen? Is it one to one? Is it going to
Mhm.
be like this thing leads to this thing? eh anyway, sorry. um
Uh,
I think we're almost out of time. I'm trying to
Oh,
keep these to 45 minutes. I would like to ask if you have any questions for me.
yes.
Okay.
I'm just wondering that how do you stay positive all the time? I never saw you um, with pain or struggling for something. Of course, you're struggling,
Of
but
course.
you don't reflect us. So how could you be more energetic and positive all the time? I'm just wondering that.
Um, oof, the good question. And yeah, I wasn't always happy, obviously, and sometimes
Yes, of course, you're a
you,
human being,
right.
but you didn't reflect any of
Yeah.
these as.
And I do want to talk about like burnout and overworking and things like that. I don't think that anybody needs to put on this like fake smile to come to school every day to be whatever it is, the clown in the class, or like a positive example. If you're struggling, this is my like PSA, my public service announcement. If you're struggling with something, reach out, get help. And I was also very vulnerable with you guys in the classroom. I told you when things were not going well. I
Mhm.
just quickly transferred back to, being positive. So you probably learned this in your, classes, the teacher persona.
Yeah.
I called it, Mr. Bob. You guys called me Mr. Bob, right? So Mr. Bob became like Superman for me. Was that like when you guys called me Mr. Bob, it was like I had my costume on, and I was teaching with this hat like the whole year because of COVID. I didn't want to have to comb my hair or do anything. I just put the teacher hat on and literally just said, I have my teacher hat on and I'm going to be a teacher. And so what I think happened was I created this persona of like who actually I wanted to be, not just as a teacher, I didn't want to be the fun teacher. I wanted Mr. Bob to be like who I could be in my regular life. And so,
Yeah.
the fact that I was like so patient with you guys, I joke about this because I'm like not really patient sometimes with my own family and friends. And then I say, why was I so patient with my students? And it's because I put on this persona. Maybe it was for work, maybe it was a professional thing, maybe it was, I can't disappoint you guys. Maybe there was some kind of psychological thing where, I should be able to say, hey guys, I'm not okay today. Let's take a rest. 5 minutes, you guys work by yourself. Let me, you know, um, but I think what I was doing and what I've created for myself is this image, and if you want to get religious, it's like, what would Jesus do? Like you're supposed to ask yourself this question. I asked myself, what would Mr. Bob do? And I try to slow down because I was really patient with you guys. If somebody said something crazy in the classroom, I'd just be like, uh-huh. Okay, that's interesting. Does anybody else have any thoughts about that? And I was just like in my head, I'm like, um, you know, a- and
Yeah.
and I do want to tell the story that my dad passed away when I was living in Turkey in 2020. It was around
I'm sorry for
September.
your loss.
Thank you. But I didn't want to tell my students, immediately, and because I didn't want to figure out how I'm supposed to move back. I was gonna, close up my apartment, go back to my
Mhm.
house in Anaheim, California, to be with my family, and so I just said, okay, I'll do what my dad used to do, which is not good. He would just work through the pain. If he was like not doing so well or not happy, it was just go to the work, go to the garage, fix something, do something. And I said, okay, if I don't do something at this moment, I'm going to fall apart. So you weren't in this class, but the listening class, I created a lesson about grief. It was a listening lesson where we talked about,
I remember that.
again, we talked about dying. We
You went back to, I believe, America, but
Yeah.
I thought uh, earthquake was the reason. You said
No,
you said I had to be with my family, my mother and
yeah.
sister. You
Hmm.
said, I, but I couldn't remember your
Yeah.
that.
It was my dad passing. I don't think I told every class. Maybe I didn't. I feel like I did tell you guys. No. Because I made a video. I just sent a video because it was easier for me to
Yeah.
record. But yeah, so then I told my students, and we had just done this lesson. They listened to a TED talk. We were listening to this thing, and I'm watching this video, and inside I'm crying, and because of the camera, I don't think they could see, but I was just like, okay, turn off the
Oh
camera for a
God.
second. Oh, I'm gonna turn off the camera. Came back, just I kept listening to it, okay, and I had to listen to this thing like five, I don't know, 10 times, and every time I listened to it, I learned the lesson better and better. And then I heard my students repeating the lesson. We shouldn't move on. We should move forward. And part of it, this was my weird thing. I didn't want my students, when I told them that my dad passed away, to say, "Oh, it's okay. All dads will die," or everybody experiences death in their life. Don't worry, Mr. Bob. And they'll, all the weird cliche things that people would say to you. I was just like, please don't say that to me.
What kind of people would say that? Something like
Almost
that.
everybody, nobody's comfortable. I mean,
Oh.
grief for other people is lots of people. They'll just be like, oh, can we change the subject? I don't want to listen to this. So yeah, we just, the lesson was that we were going to watch this thing, and then they were going to explain, watching the video, what would be their advice. If they had to give advice to somebody who
Mhm.
just lost somebody, or not even advice, sorry, how would they support somebody who just lost? So it was like, I had a secret plan for this lesson. Was, I'm going to teach you guys how to talk to me so that I don't get upset and angry and cry, okay? And so
Yeah.
I secretly did that. One of the students wrote a comment. She was just like, "Man, I thought you were a good teacher, but wow, you just taught us about grief while your dad died, after your dad died." And they were like, "What a legend."
So it's called ascending material, right?
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing that keeps me positive, is that one of the things, as a teacher, I get to choose, as an English language teacher, I get to choose what I talk about. So some days when
Mhm.
I'm not feeling well, like, during the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protest, I remember one day we just started talking about it was code switching, like the way that, like, some people
Mhm.
will change the way they talk, like depending on your with your friends, you're gonna talk like this, and then when you with your the teacher, you're like, "Hello, sir," blah blah blah. Um,
Yeah.
and then we talked about racism and discrimination, because this was things that I kind of wanted to talk about to process my own, like, feelings, and I also was aware that students might have questions too. So I think a lot of what I tried to do in the classroom, talking a lot about mental health and social emotional learning things, was that I needed those too. I needed to hear those things. I needed my students to be able to, like, be respectful, so that I wasn't gonna just, like, So I think at the end of it, it is just constructivism. We create this community in this classroom. We're allowed to talk about certain things. Sometimes we just, I would just stop and say, okay, I have a lot to teach, but this is really important. Let's talk about this topic right now.
Yeah.
So, we're doing therapy for ourselves in the classroom. And our
Yeah.
students hopefully are supporting us, and hopefully other teachers are supporting us. But yeah, for me, like, I think it was just, that was the superpower thing. I had to put on this outfit. Even in Ethiopia, I was
Super
like
Bob. Super Bob,
Super
right?
Bob. Yeah, but Mr. Bob, right? Like, that was my superhero name. Cause yeah, I remember in Ethiopia, I was like deathly sick for 2 weeks. I had no energy. Like, every time I went home, I would just sleep for like 8, 12, whatever hours. I would just sleep the entire day. But I would take the bus in the morning, and just be like fatigued already, like physically weak. And I get into the classroom and I was like, how am I teaching for 6 hours right now? And I was like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And, every time there was a break, I was just like, okay, I'm going to die.
No,
And I'm going to
God
say, yeah,
forbid.
yeah, don't, teachers out there, don't kill yourself over teaching, take your breaks. But, like, you do need to pull in to all of all of the hardships you ever had in your life. I lived through an earthquake in Japan. I
Yeah.
always think to myself, you can get through this if you live through that earthquake, Bob. So I always try to think about the hardest moments, the challenges I had. I try to pull that in. Um, I don't think that one day of me being a bad teacher affects my reputation with my students, or my trust with my students. But I felt like that was important. Showing up every day, as long as I wasn't dying, I would show up to class. Just being consistent, because I felt like that's how you guys learned. I think one of the things everyone always mentions in my feedback is Mr. Bob is very punctual, always on time. Uh, doesn't
Yes.
take days, didn't like communicated well consistently with plans and blah, 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 So those are the things I wanted my students to remember. So I had to live those moments as well. So, I don't
Yes,
know.
they build trust, and trust
Yeah,
is one of the most important things in the classes. So,
right. And I think
yeah.
once you have that as a teacher, you need to be vulnerable now. Then you need to say, hey guys, there's some things going on in my life. I'm not going to tell you exactly, but let's take a slow day today. Like be mindful, be with me. And I don't think you can do that if you don't build that. If you don't build that like initial trust and keep building it and consistently listen to them so that they can actually listen to you, because that's what it takes. It's a two-way street. But the
Yes.
positivity, what else? I mean, the last thing is have a good hobby. Like have things that you're passionate about. I always looked forward to going to boxing. So Tuesday, Thursday this year were like long, like 6 hour days, 7 hour days. And I
Yeah.
always knew, even if I was physically tired and didn't sleep well the night before, if I went to the boxing gym, I would recover. Like spiritually, I would recover, So
Yes.
I always said, hey, look forward to that. Don't say no to boxing, even if you feel miserable right now, mentally, just go. And I would always tell myself that, so, and weekends were like hiking and nature and if you have a family, if you have friends, things like that, put them into your life. We need to balance like this hellish work that we have to do as teachers, this really
Yes.
hard, difficult, inspiring work, but like very long hours, and we have to balance it with like really good positive things that we have to create, like, so you have to go home. I love cooking, so like one of the things I would
Mhm.
do after teaching was just cook because it like took my brain off of teaching. That's like one of the few things. Like even boxing, I would think about teaching, right? Because I'm like moving, but like with cooking, I didn't think about anything except for cooking. Very
Yes.
very meditative. Yeah.
Yeah. But Instagram made us miserable because of the 15-second reels. I can't focus on something for a long time right
Yeah.
now.
I, I agree and I disagree because I learn a lot from Instagram, and I
Yeah.
think one of the things though, and when you look at the research, sorry, look at the research. If you're an active user of Instagram, if you post things, if you have like a little bit of a community because you post something and your friends are, and you're actually making things that people are looking at, it actually, for me, I love my community on Instagram,
Mhm.
and for me, also, it is entertainment. Sometimes I just watch stupid things because I don't want to think about something. But then the other part is I have like one Instagram account where it's all art and music, and one that's about calisthenics and like working out without, weights and stuff like that. So I learn a lot from Instagram,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And then you
So
do
you
have to
are.
pick up the book, though. You have to go back, you find something on Instagram, do the research, sit down for like 20 minutes and read something about what you just learned about to like add that information. I don't mind the 15-second thing because sometimes I want a 15-second inspiration and that inspiration to turn into like something maybe lifelong, like, oh, I just discovered that I can do push-ups in a certain way where I can actually get physically strong without ever going to the gym again, you know. And I've been using that for the last 3 4 years since the Instagram thing, you know, since the pandemic. Everyone's like, okay, you can't go to the gym, we got to work out at our
Yeah.
homes, you know, like, wow, no, like that's been like a game changer for me. Was just like, what can I do in my house with nothing really except for a
Yeah.
mat in my arms and my legs, and that, you know, it's like cool.
Yeah. No,
So
I agree that,
yeah,
but I can't focus on
okay,
some 3 hour movies anymore. So
I know. Well, what I do miss, and this is what my boxing coach always talked about. He was a movie aficionado. But yeah, watching movies in the theater is important because you can't get
yeah.
up, you can't use the bathroom, you can't like just text your mom and call your dad and whatever. You know, you can't just get up. It's like
Yeah.
you're like in the, you know, even if it was like a ballet, you know, you're not going to stand up in the middle of the ballet and say, "Yeah, I got to make a phone call. Wait, guys, pause the
Yeah,
ballet,
how
please."
rude is that,
You
right?
know? Yeah. So like we have to go back to thinking like this is an event, and every time I get distracted, I'm missing something really important, you know? So maybe stop pausing the movie. When you know, if you put on a movie on Netflix, don't pause it, you know? If you missed it,
Mhm.
you miss it. Sorry, lady, you know, like watch it all the way through. So watch movies with people, right? Because you feel bad when you watch a movie with
Pause it.
somebody, you know, like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Oh, I gotta make a phone call. Wait for me for 15 20 minutes. And they're like, I'm not your friend anymore. Um, and I think
Yeah.
that's what's happening is it's not that we have lost our attention span, but we haven't created like that social bond that makes us less distracted, you know? And even the other
Yeah.
day, like I have some really good friends that I can sit with, and we never touch our phones for like 3 hours. And I was just like, wow. And they're, you know,
Wonderful.
I know. And then there's like maybe 5 minutes where they're like, this is a work thing. I got to reply. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. I'll check my phone now, you know? So we just check our phones for 5 10 minutes. It's like taking a break, you know, for something, right? And then the other day I was with somebody and they were on their phone and I was watching the football match. I never watch football, you know, but I, you know, now it's, you know, European football, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And my friend was like, wow, I didn't know you were so interested in soccer and football. And I was like, you know, and he was like, oh, yeah, I was texting because you were watching the game. And I was like, I thought we were watching the game together. You know, because I'm not into football. Like, it's
Yeah.
there. I don't even want to watch it. If you were talking to me, I would be talking to you, you know? So I don't know if it's a young person thing or, um, you know, I find that different people have different rules about this, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, just have a rule. Phones off the table, put them on mute, you know?
Yeah. I'm gonna try that
Yeah,
today.
do that, you know, but just make it a rule. It has to be agreed upon. You can't, like, if they say no, I have an important thing, okay, you know, but also there's a time when you can go back to it. So it's like, hey, go to the bathroom, check your phone, you know, you can both check your phone, right? And then you can also just say, hey, I need 5 minutes, you know, let's do our thing, right? I don't know. We should have these rules built into our society now that, like, it's not
Yes.
okay to be on your phone while you're talking, but it is okay to check something when you need to, you know, especially if you work remotely and things like that. So do that, please.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Okay. I'm
Okay?
going to do it today.
Okay.
Okay. I'll let you know the results.
All right. It's much longer than I thought. But thank you so much. This has been a wonderful talk. Yeah.
I thank you because
Yeah.
it was so awesome that I'm part of something like this. So
No.
I thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you for your existence, for your
Ikiki Varson.
because you're my teacher, because I met you at Çukurova University, not Gazi, I'm sorry.
No. And we met again at Metsu. This would have never happened if we
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
meet again at
of course.
Metsu, you know?
Yeah. I feel so lucky to have you. So
Oh, thank you.
thanks for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you. And yeah, anytime you need anything, let me know. I'm just a phone call or a Zoom call or a text message or an Instagram story away.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And and I don't know if you know, I'm going back to the United States on July 29th.
Hmm.
Um, But it's only a time difference. Don't worry. You can always reach out.
Okay.
Let me know
Yes.
what you need. And yeah,
Mhm.
I would love to continue this support network for teachers. Any of my former students, especially, just being able to kind of give back. But also, I love learning from what you've learned about in the classroom. What works. Just to hear that something worked in my classroom, that's really good feedback. So thank you for sharing all of those stories with me today.
Thank you for teaching me these.
You're
So
welcome. All right. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.
you too. Take care, sir.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I just coughed. Okay, I gotta go. I hope you enjoyed that interview. That was Zera Seyhan, one of my former students, senior graduating from Gazi University this year. And yeah, hope you had an enjoyable time. Thank you very much, and see you next time.